The sun was sinking low behind the jagged ridges of the frontier, painting the sky in strokes of orange and crimson, but the colors did little to soften the cruelty unfolding in the dusty square of the small western town. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, horses, and tobacco, and the murmur of men's voices swelled like the growl of a restless storm. At the center of it all stood a wooden platform, rough-hewn planks hammered together in haste, its edges worn by the scuff of boots and the scrape of chains. A woman was led onto the platform by two burly men, their grip on her arms unyielding, their faces twisted with the kind of callous amusement that only comes from long practice in cruelty. Her dress, once pale, now hung in tatters, streaked with dirt and spotted with the faint brown of dried blood. Her cheeks bore fresh bruises, her lip was split, and strands of her blonde hair clung to her face in damp tangles. But the most striking detail of all was her rounded belly, the unmistakable curve of pregnancy beneath the thin fabric, a silent testament to her vulnerability. The crowd erupted with laughter and mockery, the sound echoing off the wooden storefronts like a chorus of jeers. "Who'd pay for that?" one man shouted, his voice laced with scorn. "Ain't no good for work in her condition," another added, spitting into the dirt. The woman kept her eyes lowered, refusing to meet their gazes, though her trembling hands betrayed the storm raging within her. The auctioneer, a thin man with a greasy mustache and a voice trained to carry over drunken crowds, raised his hands for silence. "Gentlemen," he drawled, "what we have here is a fine piece of property, strong as she needs to be, and soon enough she'll give birth to a little one. 2 for the price of 1, you might say." His words sent the crowd into a fresh round of laughter, some doubling over, others whistling and clapping. The woman flinched at the sound, her breath quickening, her gaze darting toward the edge of the platform as though she might bolt, though she knew escape was impossible. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat a reminder that she was alone, trapped, and utterly at the mercy of men who saw her as nothing more than a commodity. The road out of town was long, dusty, and silent, save for the creak of saddle leather and the slow clop of hooves on hard-packed earth. The cowboy rode slightly ahead, his broad hat casting a shadow that stretched over his shoulders, his frame steady in the saddle as, though carved from the same rock, that shaped the land around them. Beside him, on a weary mule draped with a worn blanket, sat the woman, her face still pale and bruised but softened now by the faintest trace of relief. For the first time in months she was not surrounded by mocking eyes or cruel hands. The chest of gold coins he had laid down back in town had silenced the jeers, bought her freedom, and in doing so, sent a ripple of shock through men who had thought her worthless. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, the weight of the crowd's laughter, the sharp sting of their words, and then the quiet, steady voice of the cowboy cutting through the noise as he said, "She's worth gold." No one had ever spoken of her with such dignity, not even before her life had unraveled, not even before the shame of being sold like cattle had branded her spirit. The land stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of wide plains and distant mountains painted in the fading hues of twilight. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled and the woman shivered, drawing the cowboy's coat tighter around her shoulders. He noticed the movement, glanced back, and spoke in that same calm, grounding voice that seemed to anchor the air around him. "We'll make camp before dark," he said. "You'll rest. You and the child." His words struck her again, not just the acknowledgement of her, but of the life within her, spoken with a respect she hadn't expected. They rode on until the first stars pricked the sky, then stopped near a cluster of cottonwoods by a stream where the water glimmered faintly in the moonlight. The cowboy dismounted, his movements efficient but gentle, and helped her down. She winced as her feet touched the ground, her body still sore from mistreatment, but he steadied her with a hand at her elbow, neither lingering too long nor pulling away too quickly. A man of boundaries, she thought, one who gave support without claiming ownership. He set about building a fire, the sparks crackling upward, casting a warm glow across the hollow of their makeshift camp. She sat close to the flames, her hands spread before her, and for the first time in what felt like years, she let herself breathe deeply. The cowboy joined her, his gaze steady on the flames, his silence not heavy but companionable. She studied him in secret, the sharp lines of his jaw, the wear etched into his face by sun and sorrow, and wondered what story lay behind his quiet eyes. It was only after a long silence that she found her voice, soft and tentative, breaking the veil of the night. "Why?" she asked. He turned to her, his brows furrowing slightly. "Why what?" She swallowed, her fingers curling into the fabric of his coat, around her shoulders. Why did you pay for me? Why say I was worth gold when no one else thought so? The fire popped, sending a small ember spiraling into the dark, and he stared at it for a moment before answering. His voice was low, almost like a prayer. Because I've seen men lose their souls treating people as less than they are. And because once I lost someone who was worth gold to me, and I didn't realize it until she was gone. His words hung between them, heavy with memory, and she felt a pang of something she hadn't dared to feel in a long time. Hope, fragile and trembling, but hope all the same. Word spreads across the frontier that a cowboy paid gold to save a woman. Everyone else mocked. Some see it as foolishness. Others whisper of his courage. The men who profited from her sale feel humiliated and seek vengeance. They gather a gang and track the pair across the wilderness. Along the way, the pregnant woman begins to reclaim her voice and strength. She is no longer just surviving. She is fighting for her dignity and for the life of her child. A dramatic confrontation unfolds. The cowboy and the woman stand together against the gang. The woman, once mocked, proves her inner fire, outsmarting or helping defeat those who tried to break her. In the aftermath, the cowboy repeats his words not just to her, but to the world. She's worth gold, and so is every soul they tried to trample. The story closes with the sense of a new beginning, not just survival, but redemption and defiance against a cruel world. The valley stretched wide beneath a sky streaked with the pale blush of morning, a place where the scars of the world seemed to quiet themselves beneath the hush of the wind. After weeks of hard riding and nights spent beneath the endless canopy of stars, the cowboy and the woman had found this hidden place. Green meadows, watered by a stream, a cluster of cottonwoods leaning together like watchful guardians, and hills that curved gently as though shielding them from the cruelties they had left behind. Here the land was kinder, softer, though the silence carried its own weight, reminding them both that peace was fragile and had to be guarded like fire against the cold. The woman, heavy with child now, moved more slowly, her steps measured and cautious, yet there was a light in her eyes that had not been there when he first saw her trembling on the auction block. Strength had returned to her voice, dignity to her bearing, and though the pain of her past clung to her like a shadow, she no longer walked with her head bowed. Each evening she would sit near the stream, her hands resting on her belly, and whisper to the life within her, speaking of dreams she had scarcely dared to form before, dreams of freedom, of kindness, of a world where laughter could exist without cruelty. The cowboy often watched from a distance, the glow of the fire painting his face in flickering light, and though his expression remained carved from stone, something in his eyes softened when he looked at her. He had carried many burdens across the years, losses that weighed heavy and unspoken. But in this valley, with her presence and the promise of new life, he felt the faint stirrings of redemption, the possibility that his journey might finally lead to something worth protecting, worth living for. Yet the world beyond their valley had not forgotten them. Travelers passing through the nearest town carried whispers, men who had been shamed back at the auction, men who had lost gold and pride in the same breath, were said to be gathering again. Word of the cowboy's defiance had spread like wildfire, and with it came both admiration and enmity. Some praised his act as one of rare courage, others mocked it as foolish sentiment, but those who had profited from cruelty could not let such defiance stand. And so even as the woman's time drew near and the valley filled with the quiet music of crickets and the steady rush of water, danger pressed closer, unseen but certain. The baby is born healthy, and the woman feels her first true peace, holding her child while the cowboy keeps vigilant watch. Life in the valley begins to feel almost normal. Small joys, shared work, a bond forming between the woman and the cowboy that's more than survival. It's trust. But rumors reach them again. The men who once mocked her are not finished. Humiliation and greed drive them westward, determined to reclaim their gold and settle their pride. The cowboy knows that one day, he won't be able to shield her from every cruelty. Instead, he begins teaching her skills, how to ride strong, how to handle a weapon, how to stand tall so no one could mock her again. The woman transforms from victim to fighter, discovering her own strength for the sake of her child. When the enemies finally arrive in the valley, what they find is not a helpless woman but a family that refuses to break. The showdown is fierce, but it ends with the gang defeated, their power shattered. The cowboy declares not only to the world but to her, "You were never theirs to sell. You've always been worth gold." The chapter ends with the child's laughter echoing in the valley, and a symbol of survival, dignity, and a future built on courage. Some time has passed. The woman has grown stronger, not just as a mother but as a survivor, who now carries pride in her scars instead of shame. The child is beginning to smile, laugh, and fill the valley with joy. The cowboy feels the tug of two worlds, one of quiet domestic peace with the woman and child, and the other of violence, knowing the lawless frontier is full of men who despise what they stand for. Word reaches them of a larger threat, a powerful rancher or outlaw leader, who has heard the tale of the gold and now sees the cowboy and woman as a challenge to his authority. He sends men to remind them that freedom comes at a price. The cowboy prepares for the storm but also begins to wrestle with something deeper. Does he keep running from violence, or does he finally stand and build a lasting home no matter the cost? The woman refuses to be hidden away this time. She insists on standing with him, declaring that she will never again be mocked or treated as less. Their bond grows unbreakable. The chapter builds to another clash, this time not just physical but symbolic. Their family versus the greed and cruelty of the frontier. The cowboy fights fiercely, but the woman also proves herself, showing that she is no longer just someone to be saved but someone who saves as well. When the dust settles, the valley is theirs. The outlaw threat is beaten back, though the horizon still holds danger. The closing image, the cowboy, the woman, and the child standing together at sunrise. The land stretching endlessly before them. A promise that their fight isn't just survival anymore. It's about leaving behind a legacy of dignity, courage, and love. Years have passed since the valley became their refuge. The once bruised woman is now a strong mother, her dignity fully restored, her spirit unbroken. The cowboy, though older and marked by battles, has found purpose in raising the child alongside her. The child, now old enough to walk and speak, represents hope for a new generation, born not in chains or shame, but in defiance and freedom. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. The rancher's men, or another rising power, seek to claim the valley, demanding the family leave or submit. The cowboy, weary but resolute, knows this is more than a fight for land. It's a fight for the child's future. He begins training the young one in the values that have guided him: courage, honor, and the truth that every soul is worth gold. The woman plays her part too, no longer a victim of cruelty, but a leader who inspires others. Her story begins to spread across nearby settlements, giving courage to other women who were mocked or mistreated. She becomes a voice, not just a survivor. A final confrontation brews, a raid on the valley, larger and fiercer than before. The cowboy stands tall, but this time he does not fight alone. The woman and allies who were moved by their story join them. Together they repel the attack, proving that dignity and justice can be defended even in a land soaked with lawlessness. The chapter ends with the child asleep in the mother's arms, while the cowboy looks out across the horizon, knowing there will always be battles ahead, but also knowing their legacy is secure. Closing theme: once mocked, once sold, once broken, now a family forged in gold, shining brighter than the cruelty of men, carrying hope into tomorrow. Time has passed, and the valley has slowly turned into more than a refuge. It's becoming a settlement. A few wandering families, inspired by the woman's courage and the cowboy's sacrifice, settle nearby, seeking a fresh start. The once pregnant woman, now a strong leader and mother, begins to be known by others as a symbol of resilience. What was once shame has turned into honor. Her voice is listened to. Her example followed. The cowboy, however, senses danger. Power always hates to lose control, and the outlaw networks and greedy ranchers see this growing community as a threat. Word spreads of a coming raid. Not just a handful of men, but a storm, a full force determined to crush the valley before it becomes too strong. The family and settlers prepare. The cowboy trains men in defense. The woman rallies the women and children, teaching them courage in the face of fear. The child, though still young, absorbs every word and moment, already carrying the weight of legacy. The storm finally breaks, the largest battle yet. The cowboy fights with a fury born of love. But he is not alone. The settlers, inspired by the story of She's Worth Gold, stand shoulder to shoulder. Amid the chaos, the woman shows her own fire, not just a survivor anymore, but a protector. She helps save lives, proving again that her worth is immeasurable. When the dust clears, the valley stands, scarred, bloodied, but unbroken. The attackers are scattered, their power broken. The cowboy, weary and wounded, looks upon the woman and child and sees that the valley is no longer just his fight. It is a beacon for all who have been mocked, broken, or discarded. Closing theme. They thought she was worthless. They thought he was a fool. But together they built something stronger than gold, a home, a legacy, and a hope that no storm could wash away. The valley is thriving now. What began as one woman's rescue has become a sanctuary, a small community bound together by courage and dignity. The woman is no longer seen as the pregnant girl who was mocked. She is a matriarchal figure, a symbol of strength to others who once felt broken. The cowboy, though older and weary, feels a mix of pride and burden. He knows the peace they've built stands on fragile ground, and he questions how long he can hold the line. Their child, now older, begins to ask questions about the past. Why were people so cruel? Why did his father say she's worth gold? The story is told not as a tale of shame, but as a legacy of defiance and redemption. But shadows creep again, whispers of a powerful group, land barons, corrupt officials, or a new outlaw army, who see the valley as valuable. To them it isn't a sanctuary, it's land, wealth, control. The cowboy debates leaving, but the woman refuses. She declares that running only gives cruelty more power. This valley is their stand, their child's inheritance. Tension builds toward another confrontation. But this time it's more than fists and guns, it's political. Power versus dignity, greed versus legacy. The community, inspired by the woman, begins to stand for themselves. No one mocks her anymore. Instead, they call her the woman of gold. The cowboy's role shifts, less lone defender, more mentor and protector of the next generation. He begins to realize his greatest legacy is not how many enemies he faced, but what he's helped to build. The chapter ends with the horizon once again glowing with both danger and promise. The cowboy's voice, gravelly but steady, repeats his vow to the community, to his family, and to his child. You're worth gold. Never forget it. The valley has stood through storms, raids, and cruelty, but time itself is now pressing in. The cowboy is older, slower, and carries the weight of years of scars. The woman, strong and steady, has become the heart of the community. Where once she was mocked, now she is remembered in nearby towns as the woman who turned shame into gold. Their child, no longer small, is stepping into adulthood, brave, idealistic, and ready to carry the fire of their legacy. A final challenge arises. A coalition of powerful men who see the valley not just as land, but as a symbol of rebellion. They believe if they crush this family, they'll crush the idea that dignity can rise from cruelty. The cowboy knows this will be his last stand, but instead of despair, he feels peace. He sees the strength of the woman beside him and the fire in his child's eyes. He realizes his role was never just to fight. It was to pass on the belief that worth is not measured by gold, but by the courage to live free. The final confrontation is brutal, but it ends with the community standing together, no longer dependent on the cowboy alone. The child proves their strength. The woman leads with courage, and the valley survives once more. In the aftermath, the cowboy, weary and knowing his time is near, passes the torch. I said once she was worth gold. I say now, you all are. Guard that truth, live by it, and let no man take it from you. The story closes not with defeat, but with legacy. The woman holding her grown child's hand, the valley alive with laughter and life, and the memory of the cowboy riding forever into legend. Closing theme. From shame to strength, from despair to legacy, the worth of a soul cannot be mocked, cannot be sold. It shines brighter than gold, and it lasts beyond a lifetime. Years have passed since the cowboy's final stand. The valley is thriving, a settlement rooted in dignity, resilience, and freedom. People speak of the woman worth gold, and the cowboy who bought hope with his last breath as legends. The woman, now older but still strong, is the guiding presence of the valley. Her story inspires newcomers, reminding them that no matter how broken the past, redemption is always possible. Their child, now a grown man or woman, struggles with the weight of legacy. It is no small thing to be the heir of such a story. They wrestle with doubts, and will they be strong enough, brave enough? Or will the valley's enemies rise again and see weakness in them? A new enemy emerges, not the rowdy outlaws of the past, but something subtler. Corrupt officials, land grabbers, and opportunists who want to profit from the valley's growth. Instead of chains and guns, they use contracts, bribes, and betrayal. The heir must decide follow the old ways of the gun, or forge a new path, one that protects the valley without becoming consumed by violence. The woman reminds her child of the cowboy's words. Worth is not in gold itself. Worth is in the soul. Guard it. The heir rises to the challenge, using both wisdom and courage. When the new enemies push too far, the valley unites once more, showing that their strength is not just in one man with a gun, but in a community bound by dignity. By the chapter's end, the heir takes their place as the leader of the valley, carrying forward the flame. The woman, weary but proud, sees her child embrace the destiny she and the cowboy bled for. Closing theme. Legends are not buried in the ground. They live on in children and families, in every soul who remembers that no one can be mocked out of their worth.